Hello, welcome back. My name is Ari and this video was pre-recorded, so you might be like, that's a really weird change of locations. I'm confused about what's happening right now. It's alright. It's not just you. I just pre-recorded this. So I was looking at my bookshelves and realized that I have no space. I've got bookshelves that are like double, triple stacked. I've got books like piled on the floor because I have no space at all. And I was like, you know what? There's a lot of books here that I have no desire to keep for any reason. So let's just unhaul them. So this is going to be an unhaul. I've got just under 100 books to haul. So I am not going to go through literally every single book and tell you what it's about or why I'm unhauling it. I will go through some of the books, but not all of them. And we're going to break them down into categories so you can kind of understand like why I'm not going through some of them, why I'm not. But this already promises to be a very long video, so grab something nice to drink, grab a snack, because we're gonna be in for a ride here. And let's just jump right into it. Stack number one here. These are all mass market paperbacks that I've read for my Century Challenge this year, and I just didn't like the books enough to keep. I'm getting rid of all of them. You can go through my Century Challenge playlist if you want to see details about what all of these books are about. Stack number two here. More books from my Century Challenge list that I still don't want to keep and I'm getting rid of. Same applies for these as the last stack. Ugh. Now, this stack of books is books that I have read this year for, you know, just whatever different random reasons and just didn't care for. I have talked about these books this year, so I'm not gonna cover them again during this video. All of the books that I just held up, I do have a Goodreads review for every single one of them. So if there was an individual title that you're like, wait, why is she getting rid of that book? Jump down, or my Goodreads is linked in the description, and just scroll through there, find that book, and then you can figure out why I hated it. This next stack is pretty tiny. I've got The Thousand Orcs by R.A. Salvatore, which is book one in the Hunter Blades trilogy. I've got The High Druid of Shannara, Jack Roos by Terry Brooks, which is one of the bajillion Shannara books. This also is another one of the bajillion Shannara books. This is The First King of Shannara by Terry Brooks. And Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. And I know you're sitting here going, wait, isn't like Gideon the Ninth your favorite book of the year so far? Yes, it is. I'm getting rid of all of these books because they're duplicates. I don't know why. I have 2 copies of all of these books. But I have 2 copies of all of these books for absolutely no discernible reason. Next stack, all of these books I read for my book club this year and don't want to keep them for whatever reason. I think all of them were mediocre to like shockingly horrible. And this next little stack is gonna be kind of fun. They're all school books from college that there's no reason I'm keeping these. The first is The Enlightenment Reader, which is like literally stories from the Enlightenment, and I don't care. The next one is Turkish Embassy Letters by Lady Mary Wortley Montague. It's basically letters that she wrote while she was traveling to the Turkish embassy with her husband. It's kind of interesting, but I'm never gonna reread this. Next is Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift. It's kind of too ugly to really keep as a classic, and I never cared for it. Next is Essay on Man and Other Poems by Alexander Pope. Holy shit, this stuff is dry. I'm not a big fan of poetry, and I'm definitely not a fan of political poetry. Next is Candide by Voltaire. I'm never gonna reread Candide, and this is like an extremely ugly copy, so I have no reason to keep that. And the final one is Lawrence Stern's A Sentimental Journey. A, it's ugly. B, it's political, and I don't care. Alright, the rest of the books I have, I am just going to go through and talk about because I'm getting rid of them for a bunch of different reasons. There's no real rhyme or reason to the stacks that I have left. So we're just going to go through them one by one and talk about them. First is The Silver Witch by Paula Braxton. I don't remember what this is about, so obviously it wasn't interesting enough for me to reread or keep. Next I have Healthy Habits Suck by Daniel Lee Bagley. This is a self-help book. I hate self-help books. Next up is Legend by Marie Lu. I read this book. I didn't care for it enough to ever continue with the series, so there's no point in me keeping the first book in this series if I never plan on reading the series. There is a phrase in here that the main character, what is his name? Day is the main character's name, but it's like a dude type greeting, like dude, guy, hey, yo, something like that, but it's weird, and it bothered me so much that that one word made me hate this book. And I was like, I'm never gonna finish this series because I am so annoyed by how the main character talks. So this is out, no reason to keep this book. Next up is The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. This was an okay book. I'm not a fan of mysteries, and I'm not like a huge fan of that like Groundhog Day trapped in the same day over and over again concept. So I didn't love this, and it's not the type of book that you would ever reread, so I have no real reason to keep it around. Next up is I Am Number 4 by Pittacus Lore. I've had this book for forever. It actually has really cool sprayed edges, and I didn't notice that until I just picked it up. But this is the first book in a series, and I read this in high school and just never continued on in the series. So obviously it doesn't interest me enough if it's been, what, nearly 20 years and I just never bothered picking up the next book in the series, that why am I hanging on to this? Next up, I've got 2 novels in the Gossip Girl universe. I love the TV show Gossip Girl. The books are stupid. I don't care. There you go. These are by Cicely von Ziegler. Next up is a standalone book that I got in a book box. This is called Dreamland by Robert Anderson. Fairies, and yeah, it's fairies and something about dreams. And it was very mediocre. It wasn't bad though. I just don't care. I have no reason to hang on to this book. Next up is 13 Reasons Why by Jay Asher. This is about a girl who commits suicide because of the actions of 13 different people, and you get told her story of why she did it through cassette tapes that she that like tell the story of how those 13 people affected her life, and how because of their actions she committed suicide. I didn't particularly care for it. It's young adult contemporary. It's way outside of my range, and I think there are better stories that approach suicide prevention better than this one. This was just so shocking it was popular for a little while. Next is Neil Gaiman's Stardust. I like this book. I just don't like this copy. So I'm gonna get rid of this one and get a prettier copy. Next up is Phantom in the Night by Sherilyn Kenyon and Diana Love. I've never read this. This is like the second or third book in a series. I don't know what it's about, but I think I bought it because it was $2. And I wanted to read something by Sherilyn Kenyon, and it was a $2 book. But I've had this for years. I've never read it. I'm never going to read it because it's the second book in a series, and it doesn't tell you anywhere on the freaking thing that it's the second book in the series. And then the next is Little Women, and I know you're like, wait, that's a really pretty copy. Little Women's a great book. What's going on? This is half the story. Most bind-ups that you get of Little Women is Little Women and Little Wives. This is literally just Little Women. So from the story that most people get, this is only, like, this isn't even half of it. I think this is about like a third of it because Little Wives is a lot longer than Little Women. And then this particular pretty bind-up doesn't, like, exist for Little Wives or Little Men or Joe's story. I don't remember what the last one is. So I would, if I ever want to actually, or when I actually get a chance to read or reread Little Women, I would have to buy another bind-up that has this story all over again plus Little Wives, because you can't just buy Little Wives by itself. So owning this is really pointless, even if it is kind of pretty. Next up is The Devil's Arithmetic by Jane Yolen. This is from my childhood, and this is I want to say it's a time travel story. It has to do with the Holocaust, and basically like this girl in modern times is time travels into the body of a girl who is in a concentration camp in the Holocaust. And from my recollection, this doesn't handle the pain and horror of the Holocaust very well. It kind of like sensationalizes it and like makes it fantasy, and it's just eh. Next up is Go Ask Alice by Anonymous. It's a really shitty, like, story about somebody dealing with like addiction and mental health that's not handled well. So we don't need that around here. Next up is 1750 Jacqueline by Stephanie Lawrence. When I was in like high school, my favorite romance author was Stephanie Lawrence, and I picked this up like last year, I think, because I liked her series about the Sinster brothers, and this one just wasn't as good as I remember those novels being. I'm kind of actually afraid to reread them because I will probably hate them, and I just want the nostalgia. This also is not a like mass market paperback. It's bigger, so it doesn't fit in with the rest of my romance novels, so I'm just like, yeah, I didn't care for it. It doesn't fit with anything else I have. Might as well get rid of it. Next one is Stranger in the House by Sherry Lapina. I picked this up in an airport God only knows how many years ago to read on an airplane, and it's a thriller. It was okay. I actually remember what it was about, and it's been years since I've read this, so that kind of says something. It probably means it's pretty decent. I just don't have any particular reason to keep this because it's a thriller. I know what happens. I don't need to reread a thriller. You kind of like lose out on the fun if you know what's gonna happen. Next up is A Simple Favor by Darcy Bell. Again, it's a thriller. Again, I picked this up in the airport. I tend to buy popular thrillers in the airport when I run out of books to read, because I always bring a book with me and then I end up reading that book before I finish traveling and then I need to buy a new book. This one was interesting. It's a thriller. I can't tell you what it's about, but I liked it. I just, again, have no reason to keep it. So, bye. Somebody else can enjoy those thrillers. Next is A Hotel for the Lost by Suzanne Young. I don't remember what this is about. I think it's about ghosts. I've read other Suzanne Young books and I like them, but this didn't stand out enough is a reason for me to keep it. Next is What the Dead Want by Nora Olson. This was stupid. Like, real stupid. It's also a ghost story, but it's real stupid, so bye. Next up. This is The Keeper of the Mist by Rachel Neumeier, and this might quite possibly be one of the worst books I have ever read in my entire life that is not like problematic in some way, because most of the books that I read that I consider like the worst books I've read are like racist or homophobic, transphobic, like some sort of like phobia and hate. And that's my problem with it. This is just like legitimately a bad fucking book. There's nothing problematic about it. This is just bad. It has like these long internal monologue rants in it where I'm like reading this like internal monologue and I can just picture this girl where somebody just like asks her a question and she stares at them drooling for 20 minutes while she goes on this internal monologue arguing with herself before she finally answers like a really simple question. That it literally does that. It's like somebody asks her a question, she goes on this internal monologue, and then like 4 pages later she answers the question they asked like 4 or 5 pages ago, and by that time you're like, oh my god, I even forgot that somebody had even asked her a fucking question. The story is also just really stupid. Something about it's fantasy and her universe, realm, whatever, is like locked off from the rest of the world, her world, by a mist that no one can enter, and there's like all these magic passed down from like parent to child that renews this mist, and it like starts failing when she is supposed to be in charge of it and she doesn't know why. So it's dumb. Like, please spare yourself and never read this book. Next up. So this is The Omen Machine by Terry Goodkind. This is book 500 something, that's not right, in his, I don't even remember what the series is. It says a Richard and Kaylin novel, but this is like after the main series that I can't remember the name of. Wizard's First Rule, I think, is the first name in the book. What is that? You know, I gotta look it up. It's gonna drive me crazy. This is a continuation of the Sword of Truth series, and oh man. By the time Terry Goodkind got finished with his Sword of Truth series, he had just fucked over his own magic system so bad, where he would just make changes to his magic system and break the own rules of his magic system to just kind of fit whatever story he wants to tell. And it was so bad and disjointed by the end of like the regular series that this shit where it's like a continuation of their story after the Sword of Truth series is holy shit bad. On top of that, Terry Goodkind is probably like one of the, or was, he's passed now, but he was one of the shittiest human beings in the universe. And for a long time, like, I didn't even want to talk about his books, period, because no one should support his author, even though like the first few books of the Sword of Truth series are fantastic. It's just the author is really shitty. Like, we see that every once in a while. But now he's passed away, so I can talk about his books and the problems with the end of this series continuation, or even how good like the Sword of Truth books are. And I don't have to worry about anybody supporting him because he's gone. There's nothing to support. Next up is a book called Relic by Alan Dean Foster. It's a space book. A friend of mine purchased this to read, and I think he had me, maybe he started it and thought it was like too intelligent for him, and he was like, you read really fast, read this for me and tell me if it's worth it. And I read it, and I'm guessing it's not worth it since I still have it and I don't remember what it's about. Like, I remember where the book came from, but I can't tell you a single thing about this book. So I'm assuming it wasn't worth it. Next up is Wentworth Hall by Abby. That cursive is hard to read. I think it's Allie Graham is her name. I don't remember what this is about. I'm gonna say like rich kids. Rich privileged kids is what this is about. But the details I don't know. And I think this is like a younger me book where like my Gossip Girl era is where this came from. I don't know why I have it. I don't have any interest in rereading this, so bye. All right, we are on the last stack. We're in the home stretch. It's happening. It's happening. So the first 3 books on top of the stack are Vampire Diaries novels. I loved the Vampire Diaries TV show, and very similar to Gossip Girl, the novels just aren't where it's at as far as the Vampire Diaries go. So watch the TV show, skip the novels. Alright, I'm sorry if my angle's a little bit different. The card got full and I had to tilt the camera to get the other card out, all of that shit. Anyway, getting back into the last little bit of books. Cinder by Marissa Meyer. Now, this is a Cinderella retelling as an android, I think. I read it. I didn't like it enough to, you know, continue on with the series, so there's no point in me keeping the first book. Next is a book I got in a book box. It's 3 Men in a Boat and 3 Men on the Brummel by Jerome. His name is really Jerome. I'm not making this shit up. Anyway, this is book box book. It's like a comedy, and it's just not the type of book that I'd ever enjoy reading, so I'm gonna get rid of it. This is also like a custom cover, and the actual book is the ugliest thing I have ever seen in my life. So there's no desire to keep this. Next up is Monkey Wars by Richard Curdy. I got this in a book box. It's a defunct book box. It doesn't exist anymore. And I didn't think I was gonna like this, but then I read it and I actually kind of ended up thinking it's not bad, but I'm never gonna reread it. So this is more of like a pass it on and maybe somebody else will get some enjoyment out of it. But it wasn't bad. The next group. So this is book 2, 3, and 4 in the Maze Runner quartet, I guess is what it is. And it doesn't have Maze Runner in here because let me tell you, Maze Runner is a fucking fantastic book. I love it. I will reread it a billion times. The rest of this series is utter garbage. It's like James Dashner wrote The Maze Runner and meant it to be kind of like a standalone, and then it got really popular, and then he tried to like close out the series, but whatever he was writing afterwards is utter trash because he was out of ideas. I don't know if any of what I just said is true, but that's what I want to believe in my head about how The Maze Runner ended up being such a wonderful fucking book and the rest of this series is utter just drivel. Next, this is Billy Let's Shoot to the Moon. I don't know what this is about. I think it's contemporary. My mom got this book for me in like the early 2000s because my mom was at the bookstore and this author just happened to be at the bookstore signing it, signing her books, and so my mom got it like signed and customized for me, but I've never had an ounce of interest in ever reading this book, and I've just held on to it for so long because it's signed and customized to me. It says, to Ari, hello out there in California, come home soon. So I know that it had to have been between 2002 and 2004 is when my mom got this for me, because I was living in California then. I mean, I live in California now, but I would have remembered if I got this within like the last 2 or 3 years, because I was stationed out there when I was in the military. So I've held onto this book for that long because it's customized to me, but it's got some really bad water damage back here from a flood that I had in a storage unit years ago. So I'm gonna get rid of this, and I'm not going to like give it to somebody else. I'm going to just throw it away because it's just that damaged. And then I don't have to worry about giving a personalized signed book to somebody else. And I never read that. Never had the interest. And we're at the last book. Okay, you ready? Dead Reckoning by Charlene Harris. This is, I don't even know what number book in the Sookie Stackhouse series, but it is not the first book in the series, and it's the only one that I have. I honestly don't know what this is in the series. It's weird that it doesn't say that. Anyway, it's not the first book in the series. It's the only physical copy of the Sookie Stackhouse novels that I own. So why keep it? I don't know. Let's give it away to somebody else. And that's it. We're done. Let me know what you thought about this insane unhaul video. And I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.